אתה ידעתי, יש ידני משיחה ינאי ובנשמי קדשי, בגבורייס יש הימיני, אלה ברכב, אלה בסוסים, אנחנו בשם אדיני אלוהינו נזכיר, המה קראו ונפלו, ואנחנו קמנו וניסיידד, אדיני משיח המלך יעננו ויען קראנו. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'kadshai, hallelujah, b'kiyah uzai, hallelujah, b'kvaraysav, hallelujah, karev gudlai, hallelujah, b'seka shofar, hallelujah, b'nevel v'chinor, hallelujah, b'sefer machal, hallelujah, b'minig zulgav, hallelujah, b'silslei shama, hallelujah, b'silslei seruah, karlan shama, hallelujah, hallelujah. Good morning, Mr. Minsky, shalom aleichem. Hashem protect every single Jew in the world, especially those in the Holy Land, the complete Holy Land, and Yishaftem Yisrael Levetach. We won't be comforted till every single one is brought back entirely, completely healthy and well. Okay, so we have today Reb Shmuel. We're going to have a discussion today about Rosh Chodesh. Are you allowed to do malacha? Are you allowed to do work on Rosh Chodesh?
Yeah, we put it.
Right. The very last thing we learned in the Gemara was we brought a final, definitive proof. How many people are called to the Torah on a fast day? And how many is that? 3. 3 people are called to the Torah on a fast day. We'll read the definitive proof, and then we'll see, although it's definitive, the Gemara says, not so quickly. So let's say, Tashma, come in here, trying to deduce another proof, but how many people are called to the Torah on a fast day? Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 5? The Gemara will answer the question. Zeh klal, and it brings a proof, not from a Mishnah, from a Brisa. Sometimes we don't bring from the final answer right away because the Gemara Bavli goes on journeys. It's not always about the destination to get the answer, but to find out different halachas and different things on the way, which we've learned a lot about Rav when he went to Bavel, etc. Zeh klal, the Brisa says as so, and we also want to bring rather a proof from a Mishnah or from at least from Rav, who is close to the times of the Mishnahs, as opposed to a Brisa. Zeh klal, this is Yasi Shalom Aleichem. This is the rule when it comes to calling people to the Torah. How many aliyahs are called to the Torah? How many people on any given day? Kol sheyesh by bitul malacha la'am. Any day on which you cannot do labor, you cannot work that day. For example, say Shabbos, Yom Tov. Any day you cannot work. Kigoin, for example, Tanis Siba V'Tisha B'Av. If you would have more aliyahs, call more aliyah people to the Torah, it's going to take up people's time in shul. People have to get to work. So therefore, they want to shorten not shorten the davening, but don't prolong the davening unnecessarily. So if you call another person to the Torah, you might have to add more psukim, you have to make a bracha before and a blessing after. It takes up more time. And the Chachamim, our sages, were very correct, considerate of people's times and of people's, not everyone has the ability that people have to get to work. Many times you have to work during the daylight hours. Every hour of daylight was extremely precious. So a day where an extra aliyah, if you're keeping them in shul longer for another aliyah, would take them away from working. So then you only have 3 aliyahs, the minimum. And he gives examples. A fast day. On a fast day, let's say Tanis Esther, or the 10th of Teves, 17th of Tammuz, all these different fast days, you're allowed to do malach, you're allowed to do work. And therefore, you only have 3 people called to the Torah. The Tisha B'Av and the 9th of Av. I mean, the exceptions, as we learned in Mesechta Tainis, is the fast days for rain the more advanced fast days. We said there was a series of 3, another series of 3, and then later on it became more intense, a series of 7 fasts, and then another series of 7 fasts. If rain did not come in Eretz Yisrael and the lands around it, which need rain during the rainy season. So those fast days are days where you cannot do malacha and you're not allowed to work. Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, is a fast day where it depends on the minhag, depends on the custom of the place, if you do malacha or not. Some places have a custom that they could work on Tisha B'Av. Some places have a custom, and this is the predominant custom today, definitely among Ashkenazim, I'm assuming among Sephardim as well, that we don't go to work on Tisha B'Av. We don't, on that day, definitely the first half of the day, and if you need something urgently, only in the second half of the day, because we're mourning for the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and that in the second half of the day, it's not as stringent as the first half. Something very necessary could be done in the second half, but it's a minhag, it's a custom. And minhag din, from the original law, you are allowed to do malacha, to do work, and the category of malacha of a strenuous labor, going to paint your house, going to schlep bricks from one place to the next, that we don't do on Tisha B'Av, unless, if it's an exception, then you can ask your local rabbi. There are some communities which Tisha B'Av afternoon, they would start cleaning their house, painting it as a preparation for Mashiach, primarily Italian communities. So in these days, Koren Shloisha, they read 3 times. They get 3 people called to the Torah. We don't want to stretch out the Torah reading more than necessary. However, on a day where if you make davening a little bit longer, you add an extra aliyah and it makes it a little bit longer, it would not deprive people of work, of labor, because it's a day which at any rate you are not allowed to work. So if you're not working it anyways, you're not rushing out of shul, so an extra few minutes for another aliyah is not such a big deal. To go in Rosh Chodeshim, and the examples that are given here in this brisa is the Rosh Chodesh, the first of the month. It's considered less of a work day because women do not do malacha, do not work, abstain from working on that day. So if you come home and it's Rosh Chodesh and your wife wants to do laundry on your Rosh Chodesh, you have to run and say, please let me do it for you. And if she wants to mop the floor, you say, please let me sweep and mop the floor for you. For you, it's a holiday today. So Rosh Chodesh, the first of the month, where the women don't do malacha, and the Ritva says that even the men will not do malacha as well. We'll examine what that means exactly, why the men did not work, and when did that happen. But on the first of the month, it's a day where we don't do malacha, where there's at least minimizing malacha, minimizing the amount of labor, manual labor to do. The Kollel Shamayed, as well as the intermediate days of Pesach and Sukkot, called Chol HaMoed, which during these days between the first day, or outside of Israel, the first 2 days of Yom Tov and the last 2 days of Yom Tov, we don't do malacha work except for work which is davar ha'aved, irretrievable loss, or a certain malacha, a labor that's needed for Yom Tov, for the holiday.
Yeah, that would be another thing.
Correct. So you shouldn't shecht an animal. If you need it for a holiday, you could do it.
It would also mean that you go to Berev and kosher, you have good food for you to
Go shopping for Yom Tov, that's allowed always. Even on Tisha B'Av, you can go shopping for after the fast as well. That's a need for after the fast, correct. On Chol HaMoed and on Rosh Chodesh, where their people are not working at least as much as on a regular weekday, and only more extenuating circumstances, so people are not rushing out of shul as much. Koren Daled, so then you call 4 people to the Torah. So the entire back and forth previously of the Gemara to find out how many aliyahs, how many people do we give an aliyah to on Rosh Chodesh, on the beginning of the month, and on a fast day, we have a brisa which definitively says 4, and the Gemara concludes, Shema Mina, from here is indeed a definitive proof that 3 people are called to read aliyah, read the Torah or receive an aliyah on a fast day. This is explicitly stated in the brisa. The fact that on a fast day, that on Rosh Chodesh, we don't do malacha, we don't work, it's actually we have a sort of source for it in the Torah. As you know, the famous story of David and Yonasan, right? David and Jonathan.
Oh, yes.
They were considered the 2 best friends. Although Yonasan's father was King Shaul, and he was out to kill David HaMelech, his son, Yonasan, was able to see past his father's prejudices, and he loved David. And they were partners in Torah learning, and they absolutely were the best friends. And Yonasan, the son of Shaul HaMelech, he would protect King David, whenever there was a palace intrigue, whenever his father wanted to kill him, Yonasan would protect him. So we have the famous Haftarah. It comes out usually 1 or 2 times a year. It says called Machar Chodesh. It says Vayomer Yonasan al David Machar Chodesh. Yonasan said to David, know that tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. Tomorrow is the 1st of the month. And on the 1st of the month, my father makes a feast, King Shaul, and usually you are invited, but I'm not sure. It looks like my father is very upset at you recently, so don't come to the feast. I want to see if my father mentions anything about you during the feast, during the Rosh Chodesh Soda, and as Enza, it's a famous Haftarah, and we're going to have a secret signal. You're going to go to the field and hide. I will go the day after, and I will take an assistant with me. I will go target practice. I will go shooting with arrows, archery, and I will say a code word to my assistant, who will have no idea what I'm telling him. And based on the code word, you're going to know if my father, King Shaul, has made peace with you, or he's still out to harm you. So this is the famous Haftarah Machar Chodesh. And Yonasan said to Shaul, tomorrow is a new moon. Make sure you're absent from my father's table, because he might want to harm you. And it's going to be noticeable that you're absent. You, as such a great person, son-in-law to the king, or to be the son-in-law, famous general of Shaul. And your seat will be vacant. It will be recognizable. For 3 days, hide yourself very well. And go hide yourself behind a certain stone in the field on the 3rd day. And I will take with me 3 arrows, and I will shoot at a target, and I will say a code word to my assistant, and from there you will find out if my father made peace with you, or my father still wants to harm you. But the words over here, Yonasan tells David, you will come to the place where you hid on the day of work. What does it mean, the day of work? So let's open up the Rashi over here on the pasuk to show you. Rashi says, this comes to teach you that on Rosh Chodesh, you're not supposed to do work. Yom HaMasa means a Yom Chol, a weekday, where you're allowed to do work, like a regular weekday, like today. On Rosh Chodesh, it's a day which you're not supposed to do malacha, you're not supposed to do work. So the fact that he calls the day before Rosh Chodesh a day of work means on Rosh Chodesh itself is a day where you're not supposed to do work. The day afterwards is a day where you don't do malacha. So it has a source in the Torah. Questions like this. Who are the ones in shul, the men or the women?
The men.
The men. Nowadays, the women do not do malacha, don't do work on Rosh Chodesh. The reason is because a woman did not, when in the desert, after Moshe Rabbeinu was on the mountain for 40 days, and the Jewish nation, egged on by the Erev Rav, and they said, "Where is Moses? We don't see him. He must have died. Let's make a new leader." And they made a golden calf. Took their gold and their silver, and they made a golden calf. Who took their gold and silver? The men. And they took all their gold and the jewelry, and they threw it into a fire. Aaron, the high priest, Aaron, Moshe's brother, tried laying them. Hor, which is Aaron's grandson, or sorry, Miriam's son, he tried stopping them and they killed him. And it was a very sad situation, and the Jewish people made a golden calf, and the next day they bowed to it, and Moshe Rabbeinu came down and of course destroyed it and made an order. The woman did not serve the golden calf. A woman never fell for that type of nonsense. It was only the men who did it. Women are believers b'teva, by nature, and therefore the woman did not for that to commemorate that, or the women have a special holiday on the day of Rosh Chodesh where they don't do malacha. And the Mishnah over here, the Brisa, brings down that Rosh Chodesh is a day where you don't do malacha, you don't do work, and therefore you have 4 aliyahs, 4 people called to the Torah. However, the men are in shul. The men are allowed to do malacha, allowed to do work. So why delay the men in shul an extra time? Are you mean to tell me the women are allowed to have their own minyan for reading the Torah? So why are the men having an extra aliyah in shul, delaying in shul, if it holds them back from malacha, from work? So it's a very interesting, the Taz, the Torah Evan, they have very interesting outlook on this. In the times of the Beis HaMikdash, on Rosh Chodesh, there was an extra carbon, an extra musaf. On the day somebody brought a carbon to the Beis HaMikdash, that day was for them a Yom Tov, for them a holiday. They did not do malacha work on that day. In a similar way, like today, when Chassidim would receive a letter from the Rebbe, that day was a Yom Tov, a holiday for them. They wore Shabbos clothes. They did not say Tachnun that day.
Oh, good idea, because we give a Rebbe letters.
No, because you have to be deserving of it.
Never say that.
So the day that you don't get a letter from the Rebbe every day. It's a special thing. The day that you brought, now of course there were karbanis. There were karbanis brought every single day in the Beis HaMikdash, but it's impossible to take vacation every single day of the year. It does not work. However, the day when there's an extra carbon, they would not do malacha. Or a day that you bring your own carbon, your own sacrifice to the Beis HaMikdash, you'll be malacha. So it wasn't that you came in the morning, brought a carbon, and then after an afternoon you went back to your store and started selling everything, started selling Dovi's dryings, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In the times of the Beis HaMikdash, you brought a carbon that day, your entire day was dedicated to that. You did not do malacha that entire day. So on Rosh Chodesh, during the times of the Beis HaMikdash, it was a national holiday where people generally do not do malacha work, unless work that you're allowed to do on Chol Hamoed, work of things which would be lost, things might spoil. If you leave things, your flax soaking too long in the water, it's going to not be able to be made into linen. David, now when David was running away from Shaul, it was a weekday, because the first day, when the Torah calls it Erev Rosh Chodesh, was Yom HaMaaseh, the day of weekday, the day you're allowed to work. The second day cannot have been Shabbos. It was Rosh Chodesh, because on that day, David traveled. He was hiding from Shaul, so he traveled to Noiv, the city of the Kohanim, and if it was Shabbos, he wouldn't have been traveling. And the third day, Yonasan went and was shooting the arrows. Obviously, it was not Shabbos.
Yeah.
So it was Rosh Chodesh was on a weekday, and it's a day you didn't do malacha. However, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, it was a nationwide holiday. However, after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we no longer have Karbanos, a Karban Musaf, an extra Karban being brought for us in the Beis Hamikdash. So then we no longer have that nationwide holiday except for the woman. Because since the woman did not serve the Egel, did not serve the golden calf, means for them, if it was up to the woman, the whole Gullus thing never would have happened, because the whole Gullus and all the hardships and troubles all came as a result of the golden calf. So if it was up for the woman, we still would have had a Beis Hamikdash. We still would have bring Karban Musaf, and Rosh Chodesh still would have been a holiday. It's not the woman's fault that the men messed up, as usual. So therefore, the woman still keep Rosh Chodesh as a holiday and don't do malacha. However, this idea that we read we call four people to the Torah on Rosh Chodesh, that we still keep. Because to say that it's still essentially a holiday and it's something that we did once, calling four people to the Torah on Rosh Chodesh, and it's something that we stopped. But we won't go down in holiness. Once a day of Rosh Chodesh, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, had four people being called to the Torah because it was a day of national holiday, no work. Therefore, we still keep four aliyahs on Rosh Chodesh. So it's a very unique thing. We see a similar thing on Erev Pesach. The second half of a day, on the eve of Pesach, you're not allowed to work. You have to close your stores unless you're selling something which is a need for the holiday, for Yom Tif, because after midday on Pesach, every single Jewish person has an obligation to bring a korban, to bring a sacrifice called the Korban Pesach. And therefore, after midday on Pesach, the halacha is still today is also forbidden to do any malacha, any work. Rosh Chodesh is more often, it's not once a year, it's every single month, 12 or 13 times a year. So therefore, they didn't reinstitute the prohibition of asiyas malacha, of doing work. You're allowed to work on Rosh Chodesh, but women still have a special Yom Tiv for Rosh Chodesh.
But there's one actually Rosh Chodesh which you're not allowed to work, and that's Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, correct. That is where even us, we do not work, and we actually have 5 aliyahs on that day. Unless it's on Shabbos, and then you have 7 aliyahs.
So as I understand it,
the men,
excuse me,
even on, Marit says, men should be even on Rosh Chodesh, if they're able to avoid heavy work, for example, plowing, the harvesting, they should avoid it on Rosh Chodesh, even if they could. And that is a custom till today. But at any rate, it's a special Yom Tov, a special holiday for the woman. And if you're looking for a good time to buy your wife a present, definitely do it on the day of Rosh Chodesh. Rabbeinu Yerucham writes, he's seen many women who had such a custom like this. And it's 11:34. We'll discuss the idea of Minhag Yisrael, a Jewish custom. The importance of minhagim, of customs of the Jewish people. The woman had a custom not to work on Rosh Chodesh. Some women, he says, in the city where he was a rabbi, they would say that women are allowed to do malacha, to do laundry, let's say, which used to be a very big malacha, very big effort. Nowadays, you just throw it into the...
My grandmother in Israel, she used to actually every day get tired because she was busy working with the
iron with...
And so my grandfather had to wake her up as she in time for Birkas Sabanto.
Wow. Right. It would be a lot of work to do laundry, and nowadays put into the machine, stringing it, to beat it. It was a lot of work. But they would say that the main work of the woman is sewing. Because when it came to the Beis Hamikdash, it says the women were very talented, still are, Baruch Hashem. The women are talented, and they would sew the curtains for the Beis Hamikdash in a very unique way. Not like nowadays where we have all these processes. Then they would want to sew when it's as fresh and as possible as soon as it comes from the animal, the wool, and they would sew the hairs of the goat while it's still on the goat's back without giving the goat pain, or minimal pain at least. And that was the Torah calls it called Chachmas Noshim B'Yadayim Tovu Esa'izim. The wise woman, the talented woman, they would sew the curtains out of the hairs of the goat. So they would say that women's work is sewing because that's what they're skilled at. Look at the garment district, right? The women were sewing. They were the main ones. That's what they're more detailed and, they're very, much better at this. And another thing is, there might have been men who knew how to do it, but as usual, when it came to doing an Avera, giving their gold to the golden calf, the men gave their gold. They wore their earrings. Some men tore it from their ear, that the earlobes tore. They asked their wives to give their jewelry to the golden calf, and the woman said, absolutely not. So when it came to doing an Avera, a sin, the men were running and roaring to give their jewelry and their gold that they owned to the golden calf. The woman, were running and roaring when it came to sewing and to donating their talents and their time and their possessions to the Mishkan, to building a place for Hashem, to fix what the men messed up. The men messed up by serving a golden calf, and Hashem said, atone for it by building a Mishkan, and the women were the first ones to go and do it. So when it came to the Mishkan, to donate their possessions and talents to the Mishkan, who was first? The woman. The women are the ones who were doing the sewing in the most difficult ways. You have to imagine a live animal that's moving around. It's very difficult to sew on their back.
Yeah.
Well,
I do have to say, you can look at actually the later years, in which it was easy to do laundry for my grandmother as a reward for the earlier years.
the grandmother Baruch Hashem, she says, Samcheno ki mois inisanu.
Yeah.
Hashem, listen, Hashem made her happy, like the days that you have pain.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
therefore, for women, when it comes to doing the mitzvah, and therefore it's only also, they would say it's only forbidden to sew on Rosh Chodesh, but all other malacha, all other work, they would allow women to do except for sewing. The Beis Yosef writes that woman, that's what the Mabed writes, Rabbeinu Yerucham writes, and he really didn't hold to that. He says all types of malacha, all types of work are forbidden. However, if there is a minhag, a custom in a place, keep that custom. Beis Yosef writes that women would sew at home for their family, but they wouldn't sew in order to sell, in order to make a business out of it on the day of Rosh Chodesh. Although he says better that women should not do any type of malacha, any type of labor at all on Rosh Chodesh, unless it's an easy labor. How about men on Rosh Chodesh? Are they allowed to work? So nowadays we say there's no korban, there's no sacrifice in the Beis Hamikdash. Min hadin, there's many shittas, many discussion about this. Ben Ish Chai writes that better not to do malacha if they could help it on Rosh Chodesh, if they could push it off. But if it's a must or if there's a need for it, then men are allowed to do it. And don't say, yeah, I'm going to give my wife extra work after Rosh Chodesh because I don't want to work on Rosh Chodesh. Better you do it on Rosh Chodesh. We have to make up for the fact we did for the Egel, giving all of our gold and silver to the Egel. Now, a minhag, a custom, is very, very important. As a matter of fact, brought down in his farm, if you turn around the letters of the word minhag, custom, you're going to get the word Gehenim, which means purgatory. If you don't listen to a minhag, don't listen to the custom of a place, you could come to very not good things. It's one of the reasons why the Alter Rebbe, Nusach Chabad, we have a different order of the 4 questions. The first question we ask is about a minhag, a custom, showing how important minhagim, how important customs are. There's a Gemara, Mesechta Menachos. Let me just bring it up on the screen. Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. Menachos 32a. The Rav had a custom, right? Talking about different minhagim, that you must follow the established custom. Amar Rav. One must observe established customs. Even if there's talking about a certain custom which people do by chalitza, a very unique mitzvah. Do you use a sandal or could you use a shoe? Nowadays for chalitza, went through this once. We have a certain sandal, but even if Elijah the prophet comes and tells you not to do according to the custom, according to the minhag, you don't listen to Eliyahu. Imagine someone coming from the higher worlds, heavenly worlds, to come and tell you to do like this. If there is a minhag, if there's a Jewish custom, we have an open Gemara which says that you follow a minhag, follow the custom. Cannot change a custom. When many people became Chabad, if they came from the Chassidus, which wore shtreimel, the Rebbe would tell them, continue wearing your shtreimel. We only put on a gartel by when we get married. Other Chassidus do it when they're bar mitzvah. There's a boy, a bacher, a yeshiva student who joined from yeshiva where they're putting on a gartel. Went from the age of bar mitzvah, he asked, should I stop because I'm now in Chabad? And the Rebbe told him, you have a minhag, you have to continue it. When the Iranian, Chabad Baruch Hashem took out several thousand Iranian children, later on their parents from Iran, 1979, 1980, right, in the house in Crown Heights. When people went into serious debt, paying off till today, even for everything that was done, and when they had the Seder, the Rebbe says, make sure that they have rice by the Seder. Although, of course, Ashkenaz, we don't eat rice. Chabad for sure not. But their custom is they eat rice on Pesach. The Rebbe says, make sure they have rice by their Seder.
It makes it very inviting to become a Lubavitch when you don't have to turn your life around. Exactly.
Exactly.
Don't worry, you can be
so a minhag is very, very important. For example, eating kidneys on Pesach, many different customs that we have. There's the Ramah, and we're going to bring the story of him with a minhag.
My famous uncle and cousin.
Correct. And the Ramah, he writes on Purim about customs that the children would have to do on Purim, that they would write the names of Haman and any other Jewish Torah adversaries, enemies. They would write them down on trees and write them down on the ground, and people would stomp on it. And later on, from there, the minhag came that they would stomp whenever they mentioned Haman's name, make noise when they read the Megillah in Shul. But originally, it wasn't the minhag, the custom that people bang in Shul when they read Haman's name. The custom was that outside the kids would be writing on the tree and banging on the tree, to knock Haman. So true, how the custom started might have been in such a way that it wasn't originally the halacha, originally the way it was done. Therefore, we repeat Haman's name after, no one should miss it. But he says it's a minhag, it's a custom, and you cannot stop it. And the Rebbe says in his Shul 770, when the kids are banging Haman, some people say, shh, older people. And the same older people, when there's something on the floor in Shul, they don't bend down to pick it up. Something which is a excitement for Yiddishkeit, and it's a minhag Yisrael, it's a custom, you want to stop something. Well, it's halacha, and definitely a custom not to have dirt on the floor in Shul. It's very important. The Magen Avram writes that you should not change a minhag, even if a minhag seems to be a ridiculous minhag, you should not change it. Unless circumstances change entirely. And there's a story of the Ramah, brought down in Mishnah Isarish. And I don't know the original source of the story. I actually tried looking it up recently. The Ramah, it says, when women go to mikvah, the Ramah does right. The custom is they should try keeping it discreet. They should try keeping it discreet.
Oh, yeah.
The night they go to mikvah.
Yeah.
Again, doesn't mean it's a secret which is locked up in Fort Knox. It just means that don't publicize it. People know it's not the end of the world. It's like something. But when the Ramah story is when the Ramah first moved to Krakow. He was a Rav in Krakow. Moshe Israelish wrote from many Sfarim. Of course, all Ashkenazim follow his ruling till today. And he actually passed away at a very young age. You know how old he was when he passed away?
He's 36.
36 when he passed away. He lived at the same time as Beis Yosef, who passed away in his 80s at a very old age. And in the beginning, he wrote a Shulchan Aruch. In the beginning, he wrote a commentary on the Rambam. And then, right when he's writing his commentary in the Rambam, Beis Yosef came out with his commentary in the Rambam.
Yeah.
Right? So then he wrote a commentary, Kesef Mishnah, wrote commentary on the Torah. For halacha, and then Beis Yosef came out with the Sefer Beis Yosef,
Which is also a commentary.
so then he started writing a commentary, writing halachas like a Shulchan Aruch, and then Beis Yosef wrote the Shulchan Aruch. So then he wrote the Hagga's notes on the Shulchan Aruch. It's called the Mappa. The Shulchan Aruch means a set table where everything is set, and he wrote the Mappa. He wrote the any additions of the Ramah. And Moshe Israelish, a rabbi in Krakow. Till today, you can go to the Ramashal in Krakow. I've been in the Ramashal.
Wow.
It's in Krakow, about 15 miles away from Auschwitz, right next to the Jewish. He's buried in the Jewish cemetery in Krakow.
Auschwitz had a Jewish community in the past.
Auschwitzim, it's called.
Yeah.
Actually, the Rav in Auschwitz was actually deported back to Auschwitz. He was killed in Auschwitz, unfortunately. Yes. Yeah, we could go through. There's a lot to discuss about that for another time. So the Ramah, when he first moved to Krakow with a new rabbi in the city, a tremendous guy, a tremendous Talmid Chacham, and the minhag, the custom over there was that the husband of the woman of the mikveh attendant, the lady's mikveh attendant, her husband will go over to the gabbai, and the gabbai will go over to people in shul and tell them Mazel Tov. The day after, meaning the night after, if their wife went to mikveh. The gabbai will go over to the husband and say Mazel Tov. The rabbi asks, why is the gabbai going over to people saying Mazel Tov? And he told him, because the wife went to mikveh that day. And he said, what? Such a type of custom? This is called burus, he said. This is ignorance, and this is totally not sneeze, it's not modest at all. And so he said, we have to change, we have to stop doing it. And he stopped doing it.
Oh.
And unfortunately, there was a story that however the story went, but the gist of the story was that there was one husband who, the wife, he came out of town, he came from out of town, and he thought his wife went to mikveh, but his wife really didn't go to mikveh that night, for whatever reason. Either she was embarrassed, and the gabbai never came over to the husband to say Mazel Tov, because the rabbi said, that you don't have to say Mazel Tov anymore. You should stop doing it. And it ended up being that she never went to mikveh at the end, and unfortunately, they did whatever they did when she was a nida.
Oh.
And later on, when they found out about it, she went over to the gabbai. You didn't tell me Mazel Tov. And he said the rabbi stopped. He says, first of all, I didn't tell you Mazel Tov because the rabbi stopped it. Second of all, I also didn't tell you Mazel Tov because your wife never went to mikveh last night. And they found out about it, and they were shocked, and she was shocked, and the Ramah found out about it, and he says, from here we see that even a custom, a minhag, which seems even a minhag which is totally unbased in halacha and hashkafa, not tznius, still you should keep it. And the Rashba writes, even a minhag nashim skenis, a custom which comes from the elderly woman. I'm sure you have your grandmother's things. I don't know what's a superstition and what's not. There's many of them.
But you have actually different things.
There's many different things. Everyone has their own examples.
I remember reading actually that you have certain things as far as conference where really, according to the strict halacha, it should be allowed. The only thing is that because women were strict in their kitchens,
Correct.
so it became actually that okay, if we're going to be stricter, that's it.
Right.
That's it.
So exactly. So for a woman have a certain custom, even if it's the elderly woman, or in the olden days were not learned at all, still you cannot depart from a minhag, from a custom of the Jewish people. And a minhag is a very, very important thing. And truth is, there's the body of Yiddishkeit keeping the halachas, and then there's the spirit of Yiddishkeit. And the spirit of Judaism, that comes much more from the dry halacha. It comes much more from our mothers, our grandmothers. They're the ones who determine if we're Jewish or not. If your mother is Jewish, they're the ones who, from a little child, from a little young age, as Rabbi Mr. Nadis was telling me yesterday, about how his mother would tell him to always wash negavaser, right? By his bed, by your bed, right?
No, just as soon as you get up, you have to wash it.
Have to wash negavaser from a very young age. Yeah, this is, and the minhagim, the Jewish customs, are very, very important. Okay, excellent. Fine. Let's learn a few about the last 10 minutes. We're going to continue with Kuntres Umayyon. Let me just see which one it is. Okay. Oh. We're holding in middle of Perek Beis, chapter 2, Maamar 27, second to last chapter, discussing the idea of Chachma. Chachma is wisdom, but we said more than that, it's the desire for wisdom, the desire to know, the desire to get out of yourself. And the word Chachma has inside it, it's made up of the words, here, Koyach Ma. Koyach Ma, the ability, Chachma is Ches, Chaf, Mem, Hey, and you respell it to Koyach, the power, Ma, to ask what? Meaning the ability to be humble. A real wise person is humble, listens to whatever anyone else has to say. If someone is not so wise, unsure, then they can't handle if anybody else is the one talking, can't handle if anybody else is listening. But the Chacham is always able to listen to everything, something that someone else says. He's curious to know. Rabbeinu Nishmasei Eden. Beer, the Alter Rebbe, whenever our Rebbe would say the Rebbe Nishmasei Eden, the Rebbe whose Neshama is in Eden, he would be referring to the fifth Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, the author of Kuntres Umayyon. Whenever the Rebbe Rashab would say the Rebbe Nishmasei Eden, the Rebbe whose soul is in Gan Eden, he would be referring to the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, the one who wrote the Tanya. And it says in Tanya, chapters 18 and 19, Chachma, he says in chapter 19, is like a fire, just like a fire always goes upwards, no matter what direction you do it, because the source of the energy of the fire or the gas is in the orbit above the world, going back to its source. Fire doesn't, now seemingly, it doesn't make any sense. A fire should want to exist, should want to be around, should want to be important. In this world, it's important. When it's on a candle, it gives light to people. If the fire leaves its wick, and let's say there's no more fuel, and there's no more, right? There's no more fuel, there's no more candle, there's no more wick. Now the fire disappears, right? And all the energy dissipates, goes back up to its source, to its orbit. It stops existing. Can't find that flame in its original source. So why does a fire want to leave a place where it's so important and always go to its source where it's going to stop existing? That makes sense. It's l'mayla mitam v'das. It's above Alter Rebbe, as it says in Tanya chapter 19. It represents a part of the neshama of the soul, which is above understanding, above reason, above intellect, which is important for every single person to, of course, have this aspect of their life turned on all the time. The fire, the burner has to be turned on. It shouldn't let us cool down. And from this, every single Jew has the ability, as it brings out in Tanya, even a Jew who's very, very far from godliness, very far from any knowledge, very far from keeping Torah and mitzvahs, and they are very proud of being Jewish, and they have the ability to give up their life and become a martyr for being Jewish. from this power in their soul, which Alter Rebbe calls a chachma, which is above rationality. So wise doesn't mean that you understand. On the contrary, it means that you don't understand. Bina is understanding. That's chabad, the base. Wisdom is ches. That's above understanding. Maybe al zeh pasuk pesi yamin chal davar. And in Mishlei, in Proverbs from David HaMelech, from Shalom HaMelech, King Solomon, the wisest of all men, and everything there is mishalim, allegories, and he writes, Pesi, a fool believes everything. And it says, you know who the Pesi is? Who know the fool which believes everything that's going on? I mean, obviously, a fool means somebody who's gullible. But on a deeper level, it's actually going, it says, this is Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. He's the Pesi, the fool, which believes everything. Why would Shlomo HaMelech, why would King Solomon call Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, the greatest of all prophets, the greatest of all Torah scholars of any time, call him a Pesi, a fool, who believes everything? Because Moshe Rabbeinu, in his level in Sfiros, was Chachma. He was the ultimate and epitome of the level of Chachma, of the world of Atzilus. That's where his soul came from. That's why only someone like Moshe Rabbeinu was able to come up to Hashem and have complaints. Hashem, how could he be so cruel to the Jewish people? From his level of Chachma, he could ask that. Moshe Rabbeinu was so nullified and battled to Hashem, he didn't have to eat and drink for 40 days, 3 times in a row when he's on Har Sinai, because he's so nullified to Hashem. Comes from the level of shtus to kedusha, right? The 3 opinions, right? We went through this once. Did Moshe Rabbeinu not have to eat or drink? Was he eating or drinking the food of the angels, which is Torah, the word of Hashem? Or was he so engrossed in what he's doing, they didn't realize that he even was hungry or thirsty at all? And so on 3 different times he's on the mountain, based on the 3 different time levels the Jewish people were at that time. Tzaddik, they're holy, if they were Baal Tshuva, or if they were sinners at that time, depending how the Jewish nation was during those times. So Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who believes everything, meaning since he's ultimate Chachma, he's the one open to the most ideas. And therefore, only someone like Moshe Rabbeinu is able to understand godliness and understand the Torah the way it is in heaven, because he doesn't have any preconceived notions of a human being, because he is the most bato, the most nullified, and the most humble, and the most open to anything. So therefore, he's able to understand kol davar, anything. Us people, even the Torah scholars, have some pre-notions of some sort, preconceived notions, and therefore we're unable to break out of our understanding, and definitely the more spiritual understandings of the worlds, which comes from the level of the soul, which is called koyach ma, the power of understanding, the power of what? But tzrichim loymar, the bechinas koyach ma shebenefesh, hu bechina elyoina shebechachma. A chachma itself, in the level of chachma, so back to our here, chachma being the highest of the spheres, because Chassidus usually explains we count keser as a crown above the spheres, and instead of keser we usually count das. Chachma has many components to it. Of course, it has 10 components made up of every one of the 10 spheres. But Chachma itself, and those who have learned Ayin Beis can know with great length, there's different parts of Chachma, different character traits, aspects, uniqueness of Chachma. But Chachma, for what's important for us, is to know that there's 2 aspects of Chachma. This Chachma, I'll make it large.
Yeah, thank you.
This Chachma is the beginning of all shalshalos of levels of creation, and this Chachma is the end, the tail end of what's above shalshalos, the end of the keser, which is essentially in some ways above shalshalos. And these 2 aspects of Chachma, one is a higher level of Chachma, one is a lower level of Chachma. And the higher aspect of Chachma gives it the ability to be humble, because I'm literally the end of the chain, not even the chain, the end of before the chain, the end of creation, meaning the end of the infinite of Hashem. And on the other hand, Chachma has in it the ability to give to others, to be the beginning of Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, everything else, all the worlds until this physical world. So this idea, Chachma, has in it, it could be humble because it has no existence of its own, but it's able to, because of that, it's able to give over and make further worlds further on. And this, we're going to say, is the stream, the wellspring came out from the house of God and is going on. We said a wellspring goes on Chachma, Mayanas Chachma, the spring, wellsprings of wisdom of Chachma, and it's able to spread out, it's able to give, which is a lower level of Chachma, to all the worlds underneath it. Like it says, was able even to water the valley of the Shittim of the valley of Shittim, which goes on the Shtus, is able to Chachma, the ability to receive from